Hi, I'm Kevin, back again. This time I'm going to share with you several different methods of displaying a picture on the wall, starting with your basic picture frame and moving on to some other options, maybe some that you haven't seen before. So I'll be right back after this brief introduction. So you have a photograph or some other flat artwork you want to hang on the wall for display. There are a lot of different options available today. We're going to start with the basic one that you've probably all used at some point, loosely known as a picture frame. And it starts out with a rigid frame like this. This one's made out of wood. I got another one here. It's made out of aluminum. Obviously the metals come in shiny colors. They come in polished brass and all these kinds of things that you're not going to get in a wood picture frame. And wood picture frames are going to give you a look that a metal frame is not. So let me look at something else here. This is very, very different. And this doesn't use a frame at all. There's no frame whatsoever. There's no glass. There's no mat board. This is actually printed on a sheet of aluminum. It is a rigid sheet of aluminum. And the print is made directly on, I got to check to make sure I got this right side up. And you can see if it was hanging on the wall behind me like this, that it's a very different look than having a matte border around it and having a piece of glass in front of it. This doesn't really need the piece of glass to protect the artwork because it's not printed on delicate paper. You can actually clean this with a damp cloth. And it has on the back of it just this spacer, which allows it to stand a half to 3/4 of an inch away from the wall, so it's not flat on the wall, just kind of like hangs a little bit off the wall. It's a nice look if the aesthetic suits you, but you might not want this for all applications. I have another way of using these aluminum prints where I actually put a floating frame around it. We'll look at that a little bit later. All right, so our next stop is the canvas print. This one's still in the bag, and I'm not even going to bother to take it out of the bag for this purposes, but it is woven canvas with a treatment on it that allows the printer to put the image onto the canvas, because the canvas itself is not going to receive it. It needs a coating of receptive material. And then that's stretched on a wooden frame. Here's an old frame right here. This one is, I don't know why, but this one is a lot heavier and thicker than this frame here. And you can see that there was a print on here, and it was just attached with staples. So they stretch it over the wooden frame and staple it from the back. And in this particular case, with this picture, you see along the edge, it's white. So if you just hung this on a wall like this, it might look a little bit weird because it's got a white border around the edge. There is an option to change that, and it's called a gallery wrap. So this is also a canvas print, and you'll notice that the picture goes all the way around the edge. So you don't have, the edges aren't there, it's actually part of the picture. They give you a few different options depending upon the surface that you're using. One is you can tell them, I want a specific color along the edge. One, you tell them nothing, and it's probably going to turn out white. And this one is called the gallery wrap. And there's two different ways you can get a gallery wrap. In this particular case, the print only goes out to here. This is where the image stops. There is no image out here. So it can't wrap around the edge. But what the vendor did for me is they took this part of the picture and they mirrored it and then wrapped that around. So across the top, you see it's just blue sky. So if you mirror it, you're just making the sky a little bit bigger and allows it to wrap over the top of the picture. On the edge, you can see right here, there's a little tiny white glacier. And that white glacier shows up on the edge of the frame as well because they took this part of the image, they duplicated it and flipped it. And that's what allowed them to wrap the image around the wooden frame. So gallery wrap, a few different ways you can get that done. Let me show you another canvas print, which is standing up here behind me. And this is a canvas print that I chose to frame. It's a little bit wide. I made this picture frame myself, because to have somebody else make it for you is going to be very expensive. When frames get very big, they get very expensive. Now you can see that this one has a white border on it. But when I put it inside this frame, you don't see it. It just disappears. And the thing I told you before about this picture frame, where the material goes in from the back side. In this case, this is called a floating frame. And this is like a reverse L shape. It's still L-shaped, but the material goes in from the front rather than the back. And typically what's done then is you screw it using screws that go through the frame into the stretcher frame. So with this style of canvas print in a floating frame, the thing that you're not going to get is that visual separation that you get from a mat that we use in a traditional picture frame. See that the artwork is separated from the frame visually by that gap. Now in that frame you don't get that. However, here's a way you can get that. This is a custom frame that I made myself. I'm going to be careful with it because it's not completely assembled yet. And this is a canvas print. It doesn't require glass or acrylic in front of it to protect it. You can dust it the way you dust anything and maybe use a damp cloth. As we've seen before with a floating frame, the artwork is placed in from the front. However, what I've done in this case is I've surrounded the floating frame with a regular picture frame. It's actually two separate pieces. Now the picture frame, I'm going to finish that with a nice wood stain. I think I made that out of yellow birch. But this I knew I was going to hide behind a piece of mat board. You could paint it, you could stain it, but because I knew I was going to hide it, I just used cheap pine. So it's very inexpensive lumber. And the floating frame goes into the traditional picture frame, as all traditional picture frames do, or not all of them, most of them, is it gets inserted from the back. So assemble the frame, insert the artwork. A little bit of a different option. You're probably not going to find this one in stores. Previously, when we were looking at the print on aluminum, it didn't have a frame around it, didn't have a mat around it, didn't have any glass or plexiglass in front of it. It was a very minimalistic presentation. I said I had another way of using aluminum prints, and here it is. It's a little large. This is from an exhibit I did a year and a half ago about tall ships. This is an aluminum print, and it's glued to a 3/8 inch thick foam core board, so it floats a little bit in front of the backer board, which is just basic plywood. So I took a sheet of plywood, I glued the foam core in between, sandwiched it, and I put it into a traditional picture frame that I bought online. I just simply ordered it with the dimensions that I wanted. And what you get is you get that visual distinction of the border between the frame and the print, but it's still an aluminum print. It has kind of a glossy look without having any kind of glass or acrylic in front of it. It's a very different look than canvas, which is textured because it's printed on woven canvas. It's a smooth, very stylish print, but here I've combined it with a traditional look of a wood frame and a mat board that provides a visual separation between the frame and the artwork. It's pretty nice. I really like it, and it's not particularly heavy, which it would be if I was using a sheet of glass. I've got one more type of frame to share with you, if I can get this out of the way without damaging anything. And it is, there it is. That's a picture frame. Well, it's a frameless frame. It's a clip system, and there's several different ones out there. And what you get in the box, you get 4 metal clips. and some string. And the idea here is you put one of these clips in each corner of your print. So you've got a photographic print on paper, and it's mounted on a board. In front of that you have the mat board, and in front of that you have your acrylic or your glass. But instead of holding it together with a rigid frame, you simply put this clip behind it. You put one of these clips in each corner. I got them all tangled up. You put one of these clips in each corner, and they get tied together with a piece of string. So you get this minimalistic look that we saw with the aluminum, same minimalistic look without anything around it, but you can do it with a print that's on traditional photo paper, and it needs glass in front of it to protect it. So they're using that old familiar way of making prints that we've been doing for decades. You can still get this frameless look. Well, that's all the examples I have for you today. I hope that's been helpful, that you've seen some things that you haven't seen before, maybe got some ideas what you might want to do with your own. There's still more examples out there. There are companies that will print on a sheet of acrylic. They put the print behind it, so you're looking through the acrylic to the print that's directly printed on the back. You can get a company to print on wood if you want. There's almost no limit these days. And well, I hope that gives you some ideas. And I hope I gave you some nice examples to look at, some pieces that I'm proud of, some that I made myself. That's all I have for you. I will see you next time. Bye.